Hey, what's up, friends? Grant Baldwin here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a great day. All right. So, as you well know, hopefully by now, we've been doing a series of these conversations and interviews with those in the speaking industry, talking about these unique and weird times that we are in here in this COVID world. And so today we wanted to talk about the financial things that you needed to be thinking about, specifically about the stimulus. Now, this is something that I'm sure for many of you that have been hearing about this, if you're like me, you're kind of like, what is this? Does this apply? It's $2.2 trillion. And do I get any of that, or who gets any of that, and how does that work? And so, especially for speakers, this is something that's really, really important. So, exactly 2 weeks ago, right now, when this was first starting to get close to being passed, and a friend of mine texted me and said, "Hey, you really need to pay attention to this." And then I was kind of messaging with Josh and Andrew on our team on the financial stuff, and we're just trying to wrap our minds around it. We've been neck deep in this for the past couple of weeks, and so we wanted to hop on here and do this training, just to kind of talk through what speakers need to be thinking about and how the stimulus affects them. So to do that, I am not the financial expert, so I'll take all credibility on and what's the word I'm looking for there? I don't want to get in trouble.
Blame. Is that the word you're looking for?
We'll take that off the table here. We're going to put it instead on Josh Bauerle. Josh and his business partner, Andrew Davis. They have been handling our finances for the past 4 or 5 years, something like that, on the accounting side, on the tax side. And these guys are extremely, extremely smart when it comes to this. And I said, hey, you guys have been a ton of help to me personally in the Speaker Lab and our business, but we want to talk about how does this actually affect speakers as well. So Josh, first of all, thanks for hanging out with us. We know it's been a busy time for the past few weeks with you, with all that's been thrown at you here. So let's answer the big question. How does the stimulus impact and help speakers right now?
Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff that came out to help small businesses and entrepreneurs. We're going to focus on 4 things with this. Number one, the stimulus checks that are coming to everybody, not just business owners. That'll be probably the best news part of this show. I can do the best update on that. We have unemployment, which for the first time extends to business owners, entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, whatever you want to call yourself, as someone that creates your own income, independent contractor. You can now file for unemployment, whereas in the past that was strictly for employees. And finally, there are 2 loan or grant programs that they are offering small business owners: the EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. So we can hit on all 4 of those, give you good news, the bad news, a lot of uncertainties, but we'll hit them the best we can.
All right. So where do you want to start here? You mentioned stimulus.
Yep.
The stimulus check, the unemployment, the EIDL, the PPP. Which are those? If a speaker's right now going, all right, I don't know what any of these acronyms are, the things that you just talked about. What can you kind of categorize them as which one's going to be the most likely one that we need to be paying attention to right now?
Yeah, so I guess let's start with the good news version of that, the stimulus check. All right, and these are going out to most individuals in the country, and is going to be $1,200 per adult, and up to $500 for each child that's under 17. Okay, so if they're 17, they don't qualify. They got to be under 17. And there are income limitations on that. If you are single and you make over $75,000 a year, it starts to get phased out. You lose it completely at $99,000 a year. If you are married filing joint, it starts phasing out at $150,000 and disappears completely at $198,000. So if you're under those thresholds, you are going to get $1,200 if you're single, $2,400 if you are married. Then if you have kids under 17, you're going to get an additional $500 for each kid. So for families, this is a pretty decent chunk of change, right? I mean, you're talking $3,000 to $4,000 for the average family. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there anything that speakers would need to do to qualify for that, or is it I just exist and they send me money, or how does this work?
If you've filed a tax return for 2018 or 2019, you are in good shape. There's nothing you need to do. And the good news update here is as of now, it appears they are going to start sending these out to bank accounts next week. For some people, over the next couple of weeks, they're going to start going out. I mean, until we have it in your account, of course, we don't know. But I'm fairly confident these are going to go out pretty quickly here. A couple notes though on it: if you have not filed your 2019 tax return yet, they're going to base it on your 2018 tax return. So there could be a little strategy here. If in 2019 you made more than those thresholds, but in 2018 you did not, do not file that 2019 tax return for a couple of weeks. You will get that and you will not have to pay it back. Kind of not taking advantage. You're getting something that you otherwise wouldn't have if you wouldn't have filed that return, and it's perfectly legal to do that. So
now, there was a question specifically on this. Are the earnings thresholds based on billings or on the adjusted gross income?
Adjusted gross income. So if you have a business, if it's showing up on that Schedule C as a sole proprietor and you have other deductions to take down that AGI, it will go based on AGI.
Okay, cool. All right. So that's the stimulus side, which hypothetically, again, assuming you're below that 75 to 100 threshold, is going to be benefiting speakers. What about, all right. So then on the EIDL, the PPP, unemployment, what would be the next one we ought to pay attention to?
Yeah, let's go to unemployment. Like I said, this is different for business owners, independent contractors, freelancers, whatever you want to call yourself. You are now able to do this if you are impacted from COVID. So if you normally make $10,000 a month as a speaker and you're making $1,000 a month, you are potentially able to get unemployment to make up for some of that. And they haven't said exactly how it's going to work. Each state's a little different. That's where we should start, is every state handles unemployment differently. Typically what happens is you get 50 to 60% of your normal pay with a max amount. In most states, max amount is around $1,000 a week. So it's a decent amount of money. But on top of that, the federal government created as a part of the stimulus, they're going to give you an additional $600 per week for 4 months as we get through this. So you may be a business owner, think unemployment doesn't apply to me. It does in this case. Most states are overwhelmed. I'm in Ohio. I'm getting people all the time saying, I can't get through. What do I do? These states are overwhelmed. Give it time. The best thing I can do is tell you is be relentless. Get on the website over and over and over again. Call those numbers over and over and over again. Being self-employed, you're probably going to have to talk to someone to make sure you're doing it correctly, because this is as new for them as it is for you. So everyone's kind of making things up as they go, but you are going to be able to get this, and it's going to be a decent chunk of change. So
again, so just to kind of recap on that, you said it's going to be different state by state. You're going to have to actually file through your state. Yep. The states are going to be a little bit overwhelmed right now. The amount you're going to get is going to be slightly different. And so again, just to clarify, even if you are, let's say you are a typical like W-2 employee, but then you do some speaking on the side, are you able to get it for both the W-2 and for what you would get from speaking gigs, or what you lost on speaking gigs, or how does that work?
Potentially, yes. So the max amount you can get will be the max. So you can potentially combine those two things if you were hitting both. But once you hit that max, you can't double dip into your business or your employment. Okay. And the max is different in each state. So
okay, gotcha. And so it doesn't matter like what the combination of how many gigs you may have lost, or what percentage of your speaking is that has decreased. They're just looking at the big picture of your total income. Basically,
what they're going to ultimately look at is how much income you lost.
Okay. And so is that going to be, let's say, for example, if you're W-2 and you also do speaking, yep, you were able to maintain, you still have your W-2, but you've lost a bunch of speaking. How would that play out?
Yeah, and that's where they're kind of making up as they go. That's where you're going to want to talk to them. They're going to look at your total picture. They're going to look at how much income you were making, how much income you lost, and then qualify you based on a certain amount of that. Okay. But the good news is sometimes the state will say, look, what we're seeing here, you're able to get $200 a week, which is crappy, obviously, but now you're going to get this additional federal amount of $600 per week. So now you're pulling in $800 per week. And I know for a lot of people that might still be a hit, but it's much better than it used to be. There's some people that are going to make, frankly, more on unemployment than they were making working. Okay. It just depends where you fall in that and what state you're in and how much they allow per state. So.
Which states are the most advantageous right now?
I don't know. I've never seen a breakdown on states. I can tell you Ohio, I believe the max they do is $800 per week, and then you're going to get $600 per week on top of it. So some people are going to be making $1,400 per week on unemployment.
$1,400 per week's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's there's worse results.
How long can you collect on that?
So the federal $600 extra per week is a 4-month program. Obviously, if things continue, they can always extend that. For now, it's a 4-month program. Unemployment, that again is state by state, but the federal government has kind of demanded that they expand what it typically is. Okay. And the other thing is, typically when you're collecting unemployment, you have to sit in there I don't know if every week or every month or whatever it is, say, I applied for this many jobs, blah, blah, blah. They're waiving that during this COVID-19 crisis. There's not going to be any, you have to apply for jobs. You have to do this, you have to do that. It's just okay. You collect.
Todd asked, after application, how long does it take to start seeing unemployment checks?
Usually it's very quickly. Right now it's like anything else, they're overwhelmed and it's slow. The good thing is the reason you need to apply ASAP is because once you do get paid, they backdate it. So if you apply today, say, hey, I was out of work today, they don't pay you for 3 weeks. They're going to go back and pay you for the 3 weeks that it took them to get this all set up.
Gotcha. Okay. So initially that first initial check could be a decent one.
Yeah. Yep. Especially with that $600 coming in. Yeah.
Okay. Heather asks, is there a certain way to fill out the application correctly?
So what I've seen from self-employed people, the states have not figured out how to add that into. The first thing you got to realize is these states, most of them are using freaking antiqued websites for this. And they're used to getting, a couple thousand. I think I saw Ohio typically gets like 5,000 a month. Now they're getting like 100,000 plus a week. Yeah. So they're overwhelmed already. And now they're on the fly being told, all right, now add unemployment or add self-employed people. Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't know I don't think they even know what's correct. The best thing I can tell you is get someone on the phone, call relentlessly. It's funny, in Ohio, you couldn't get through on the phones. And one of my renters, I have rental properties, and she said, one of my renters texted me and was like, hey, I found the secret. Call and check, test the number for the Spanish line and just keep pressing all these buttons. And then you get through faster because there's less people calling through with that. So all that to say, be creative, try stuff, get someone on the phone because that's your best bet.
Okay. All right. So we've talked through the stimulus check, the unemployment. I know we've also got the EIDL and the PPP. What are the of those two? Which are the most? What do speakers need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, both of them could apply to speakers here. The EIDL is that one's a straight loan up to $2 million for businesses impacted by COVID-19. Now, on top of that, the first $10,000 is a straight grant, meaning you never have to pay it back. Okay. That was as of a couple of days ago. In recent days, they have the SBA, who the Small Business Association, who kind of is in charge of these programs, came out and said, actually, the way we're interpreting the rule is it's actually $1,000 per employee for the grant portion, or a straight $1,000 if you're just a sole proprietor. Which significantly reduces how attractive that program is, especially for sole proprietors. It'd be a flat $1,000. Congress then came back and said, that is not how we intended it. And they wrote a letter saying, do this how we intended. We want that $10,000 grant going out to small businesses. So we're basically at a standstill. I've known a lot of people who applied for that grant right when it happened. I do not know a single person who's received any of it yet. I don't think that's went out yet.
Okay.
But at some point that is going to happen. You are going to get some portion, if you're approved for it, that is a grant. All you have to do is be impacted by COVID-19. So far, they've not said you have to prove anything. It's just going to be you telling them you're impacted, and you're going to get some amount of that. And then if you need additional on top of the grant, you can get a loan up to $2 million. Obviously, that'll depend on your business and how much you need and how much you're able to pay back. But they're very favorable terms. They can be extended up to 30 years potentially. Low interest rate, I think 4% is the highest they can go on it. So it is going to be an option for people who need that cash to get by.
So the EIDL, at this very moment, they can get a $1,000 grant, but hopefully after Congress does their part, it'll be a $10,000 grant, and then they could potentially get more above that, but that's going to be in the form of a loan.
Exactly.
Correct?
That's correct. Okay. The $10,000 they'll never have to pay back. Anything beyond that will turn into a pretty favorable loan. Okay,
gotcha. Okay. Anything else on the EIDL?
No. So the other thing I'll add on that, it's very, very easy to apply for that. Go to sba.gov. Right when you get there, you will see a little thing that says like COVID-19 applications. Just follow those, and it'll show you the $10,000 grant. It took me 10 minutes to do the application. I just went through it to see how it was. Very quick. You put in your income numbers. You put how much you've been hit. And then I'm guessing from there, they'll eventually reach out and say, all right, this is what else we'll need to approve the loan. But supposedly that's going to be all you'll need for the grant. They're going to look at that, issue whatever amount you're eligible for on the grant, and then reach out and say, all right, do you want anything above the grant? We'll see if you are approved for a loan.
Will it be like basically an automatic, assuming a Congress gets it all figured out, will it be an automatic, like, hey, just $10,000 for whoever applies? And then you tell us, we have a conversation about how much more above that you need. Or is it going to be like a sliding scale of you can get
Yeah.
up to $10,000 based on these other factors, or how would that work?
So the original way that it was read was that it was going to be a $10,000 and just a flat $10,000. And that's kind of why people rushed out, like, I'm applying for this, boom, 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 boom. And I think I read like 1.8 million people applied for it right away.
Yeah.
Now, who knows? But I think the way they intended it was that 10,000 was supposed to go out to people who applied.
Okay. All right. Okay. Heather asked, would speakers apply for unemployment or the grant or both?
I'd apply for both. Absolutely.
Okay. One, like if you apply for and get the EIDL, it's not going to affect your unemployment benefits in any way.
So far, they've not said it. Certainly the loan portion would not, because that's a loan. I don't see any reason that the grant would. And the other thing you have to remember is EIDL is federal government, unemployment is state government. They generally don't talk to each other. There's not going to be someone saying, hey, this is the unemployment office. Did Grant apply for your $10,000 program you have?
Right.
They don't talk to each other. So I'd apply for both and figure it out, whichever one gets there first.
Zara asked, can you apply for EIDL if you have W-2 in addition to speaking gigs?
Yeah, that's absolutely. That the EIDL is strictly for businesses that have been impacted. So I'll use myself as an example. I have several businesses. Several have not been impacted, but I also have rental properties, and there's a lot of people that couldn't pay rent. So I applied for that $10,000 for my rental properties, even though most of my other businesses have not been impacted. So yes.
Okay. Todd was asking, is it possible to be denied for the EIDL?
I don't know anyone that's been approved or denied, so uncertain at this point. I would guess yes. I would guess there's going to be some cap on how many they accept. So at some point they're going to stop accepting people, and you're going to be denied.
Okay. So it seems like, and like across the board, that a lot of this is in flux,
Yep.
I'm thinking about like, in the past 2 weeks, the number of conversations that you and I have had of one day it was, okay, here's our plan. And the next day it was like, oh, wait, never mind. Scratch that. Here's our new plan. And it is dramatically shifting and changing. And so realize that you got to be a little bit patient here with the government, with the banks, with your attorney or your CPA or whoever you may be working with on some of this stuff, because it's literally like this giant game was created 2 weeks ago, and the rules are still being trying to like figure the rules out, and the rules are changing some. So it's a lot that's happening. And so I've tried to, even on some of the stuff that we've applied for, to be like overly appreciative and like, hey, I know this is a lot right now. So you're being swamped right now. So this could all be subject to change here.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'd say be patient, but also be persistent. And I know you've been doing that. You're following up with the bankers. You're following up with me and Andrew. You got to know, and that's with everything, with these loans, with the unemployment. You've got to be talking to the people that can make this happen and seeing where it's at. So.
Okay, let's do a couple other questions on the EIDL, and then we'll get to we'll talk about the PPP. So Tim asked, do unemployment and EIDL go off of W-2 and or K-1?
So unemployment is going to go off everything. They just look at your total income. What were you bringing in? What are you bringing in now after COVID-19? So basically, how much total income did you lose? The EIDL, the only thing they're looking at is your business. Was your business impacted? If so, in theory, you qualify for this $10,000 grant.
Okay. Jose was asking, does your past credit history, specifically bankruptcy, factor into EIDL acceptance?
Yeah, so EIDL, the PPP, which we talk about next, has zero connection to the owner of the business. They don't have to worry about their credit or anything like that. The EIDL, there's a little bit of uncertainty there. Typically, the owner does have to be responsible for it. They're a guarantor on it, and they are going to look at your credit and everything else. But they are saying if you're getting less than $200,000, that's not going to apply. So I don't know if that will ultimately be what they do, but the way it's written now, they would not.
Okay. Zara asked, do you need to have an LLC to apply for the EIDL, or can you apply as an individual citizen?
You do not have to have an LLC or any type of entity. You do have to be a business owner or an independent contractor or a freelancer. So you can't, it's not something you can apply for if you just had a job and you lost your job. It's strictly for business owners, but you do not have to have an LLC.
And then John asked, so far the two places to get financial help is unemployment benefits and the SBA.
Correct.
As well as the stimulus check.
Yeah, the stimulus that's going to be automatic. But the two places that you need to take advantage of yourself is the SBA and the unemployment. Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So we've talked through the stimulus. We've talked through unemployment. We've talked through EIDL. Let's talk through the PPP. This is the one that I've paid the most close attention to. This is the one that has the biggest impact on us here at the Speaker Lab. And so this is probably the one I'm most familiar with, but it also feels like at times the most complicated one. So Josh, give us the overview. What is the PPP? What's this acronym and what does it mean?
So PPP stands for Payroll Protection Program. And it is to help people keep their employees. It was the kind of what they said it was at first. But that's where a lot of uncertainty came in, because then it was, okay, does that include contractors? Or should contractors apply for this themselves? Essentially, what it comes down to is if you own a business, you've been impacted by COVID-19 in any way, you are potentially eligible for 2.5 times your monthly payroll. All right. If you're a sole proprietor and you don't have employees, you are eligible for what it looks like is going to be 2.5 times your average monthly profits. All right. That's the simple version of it. The difficult version of it is, number one, who's included in employees? Does it include strictly employees that you're actually taking payroll taxes out of, you're issuing a W-2 to, or does it include contractors who act a little bit like employees? At first, it looked like contractors were included. Then it looked like contractors were not included. Now it's kind of, we don't know for sure. Right. Some of this is just going to come down to the bank you talk to, frankly. Most banks are saying no contractors. Some banks are saying include contractors. Yeah. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. What do you want to unwrap first? I don't even know where to start.
Right. Okay. So again, I think a lot of people who are going to be watching and listening to this are people who do not have employees, who are looking at themselves as sole proprietors, who are just looking at their own financial losses from speaking, for example. So explain that to us. If I'm a sole proprietor, I had some gigs, now I don't have any gigs, and I'm able to go back on 2.5 times my profit and potentially get that amount. How is that 2.5 times of profit? Where's that number coming from? What is that based off of?
Yeah. So, and this is where they're the most uncertain is how it's going to work for sole proprietors. But the way it's reading is it's going to be based strictly on your profit. And you're going to get that by looking on Schedule C of your personal tax return. That's going to show the profits you reported for 2019. You're going to take that. You can't use any more than $100,000. So if your profit was $200,000, back it up. You can only use $100,000. So let's just use that. Let's say you're eligible for $100,000. You divide that by 12, which comes out to, I think, just under $8,500 per month on average. Then you multiply that by 2.5, which is going to come up to just over $20,000. And in theory, you're going to be eligible for $20,000, a little over $20,000 on this loan. All right. The best part about this that makes this so attractive is it's not really a loan. At the end of this, in 8 weeks, assuming you use it on qualified expenses, then they're going to forgive this loan and you never have to pay it back. It's essentially free money from the government.
Okay. That's a big deal. Did we all catch that? Did we catch that, boys and girls? That's a really, really big deal here. Okay. Some other follow-up questions here. So again, if it's based on the profit, you mentioned based on your 2019 Schedule C. Yep. So it's based, because I know we've kind of talked about different things of going from like the February 15th, 2019 yep. to February 15th, 2020. So is it currently, if you just look at 2019, how much did your business profit and loss, and whatever that number is, as long as it's below 100,000 or a max up to 100,000, then you can divide that out, and that's the figure that you're using. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's what they're saying. If you filed your 2019 tax return, they're going to use your 2019 tax return, maximum profit up to $100,000 divided by 12, multiplied by 2.5.
Okay. All right. So again, for people who are still trying to figure out like, okay, what's with all the dividing and multiplying, what they're trying to get to here is they're saying, we want to give you 2.5 times or 2.5 months worth of your profit or of your payroll, so that looking ahead that we can, that the government's able to help you out here for the next, 2.5 months, give or take. Right. And hypothetically, if this continues to go on longer and longer, then they would do another round of this for another however X amount of weeks or months that they decide upon. Okay, so let's say, for example, though, that if this is currently based on your 2019 taxes, a lot of people maybe have not filed their 2019 taxes, especially because that's been pushed to July now. So what does that mean if you have not filed your 2019 Schedule C?
So what they're saying at this point is they're going to want to see financial statements. They have not said from what period they're going to want those, but they're going to want some form of financial statement. So you're going to want to make sure you have a profit and loss statement ready, at least for 2019. And I would try to get one ready through February of 2020, because they're going to want some documentation of what those profits are.
And just a P&L?
That's what I'm guessing. I don't know why they'd need a balance sheet. If you can produce both, absolutely do. But at the very least, you should have a profit and loss statement ready.
Okay. And so here's what makes this a little bit tricky. And you kind of alluded to this, Josh, and this is important for everyone to catch, is when you're applying for the EIDL, you're doing that through the SBA website. So the government website. When you're applying for unemployment, you are doing that through your state's website or through your state office, right? The stimulus check, the government's just going to send to you. But the PPP, you're actually going to be filing for this through your local bank. And hypothetically, most every bank is going to be participating in this. Okay. Here would be my 2 cents based on what we have seen so far. Because what they basically did is they opened this up for certain types of businesses this past Friday. So about 6 days ago, and it's been pure chaos. And they are opening it up to sole proprietors tomorrow. Okay. So Friday, April 10th. Is that correct?
Yes. For that, supposedly tomorrow. Yes.
Okay. Allegedly. And so what we have found is that the bigger the bank, the more overwhelmed that they have been. Okay. So your Bank of America's, your US banks, your Wells Fargo, that sort of thing. We personally at the Speaker Lab, our bank is US bank. And so, but that is a big bank. And I didn't have a great personal contact there. So I ended up actually working with a smaller credit union, where I have a contact to someone. They were able to get it. You're able to actually talk to someone. You're able to get it submitted quicker and get it approved quicker. But you're going to be actually going through the local bank on this. So if you have a connection with a local bank of any form, I would start by reaching out to them and seeing what they know about the PPP. Would that be fair? Would that be accurate?
No, I completely agree with that. If this is where, if you have a connection to a banker, it's going to come in handy, because most banks have limited slots that they can give out at this, at least for now. I think they're going to continue to get more, but obviously the better the connection you have, the further in line they're probably going to put you. Yeah.
And so if you already have a banking relationship, that's one of the main things that they're going to be looking for at the moment. Because in fact, there's an entrepreneur friend of mine. He had a friend who was a president of a bank, and initially it was like, hey, go to this guy. It's a small bank. They should be able to help you out. And they were just overwhelmed with applications. And so they finally cut it off and said, we can only help people who already have an account with us here at the bank. Okay. And we've seen a lot of banks that have been doing that. The credit union I ended up going through is because that's who we have our mortgage with. And I have a connection there. And so that's what I ended up doing versus US Bank. Again, big bank. They have the application available, but it would have been a long process to get through that. So that's kind of our thought process, and that's been a little bit helpful there. Okay, so let's talk through then. That's important, and you kind of touched on this, but you figure out what this 2.5 number is for payroll or profit. The bank issues that amount to you, assuming you've been approved. Now, let's be clear that that amount is a loan, correct?
It starts out as a loan, yes.
Okay. But how is that different for payroll versus profit?
Yeah. And this is the tough one. So let's look at the way it's going to work for someone like you. You have an S Corp, you have employees. All right. They're giving you 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. And they're telling you that if you use that money to pay your employees at least 75% of what you were paying them before this happened, and you use that money to pay rent, utilities, loan payments, there's a few other things that they're calling qualified expenses, all of that will be forgiven. All right. If you, let's say that disaster happens and you still have to let one employee go, and you had 4 total, you're going to get 75% of that loan forgiven. So it's all based on your employees and these other qualified expenses. As a sole proprietor, if you have no employees, it's kind of to be determined what is going to be qualified for forgiveness. We know that it's going to be eligible for forgiveness. We just don't know for certain yet what it has to be spent on in order to qualify. If I had to guess, it's going to be some form of owner's comp, meaning just owner's draw, and some form of the same type of expenses like rent, utilities, loan payments, things like that.
Kathy asked a good question here. So it seems like the PPP doesn't make sense for those of us who have only lost, no profit, no employees. So that'd be
I would agree with that. I don't see a scenario where PPP would make sense. I would be going harder after EIDL.
Okay. So if you don't have, if you look back on the past year or so, and you didn't make anything from your speaking business or you showed a loss, then I wouldn't worry about PPP. But if you did, a decent number of gigs and then have been affected this year, then you absolutely would be, even if you don't have any employees, you would want to be paying attention to the PPP, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say the other thing is I would still talk to a bank and say, look, this is my scenario. What do you think is the best route for me to take here?
Okay. Cool. Okay. So one of the things that we touched on there is that, again, that is initially issued to you as a loan, but again, assuming that you're using it for qualified expenses, and it sounds like the qualified expenses is still a little gray. You need to talk to your bank, that you use it for qualified expenses, and then that amount is forgiven, and you get that money free and clear. Which again, that's the really important part here. Is it starts as a loan, but as long as you use it for the proper things, it turns into a grant that is not taxable either, which is really, really important, right? So you may get a, like you mentioned, if you're capped at $100,000, and so you get a grant for, let's say $20,000, give or take, that's free and clear money that that is not going to be taxable. So that's a big deal.
Not income, pay zero taxes on it. It's just $20,000 appeared in your account out of thin air, and you never have to claim it.
Weird.
Best gift you'll ever get.
Okay. All right. We've had anything else on PPP?
So let's talk about what happens if for whatever reason it's not forgiven.
Okay.
In that scenario, it will turn into a 2-year loan. All right. It's going to be 1% interest. So literally almost no interest, but it is a short 2-year loan. But they are going to defer payments for at least 6 months and potentially up to a year, depending on what your banker says. So it's a very good loan in terms of getting the payments deferred and extremely low interest rate, but it is a little scary that it's a 2-year term. It could be a short turnaround time, which means high monthly payments. So my thought here on the whole forgiveness thing is, I would say my ultimate thought is, as long as you're using that money to continue doing what you were doing in your business before, you're going to qualify for forgiveness.
Okay. Let's walk through. We've had a bunch of questions that have come in, and if you do have additional questions, keep dropping those in the chat. Jose asked, are the PPP looking at the average gross or net profits?
So the way it's sounding is they're going to be looking at net profits. So they're going to consider net profits basically the owner's compensation is the way that it looks like they're thinking of that.
Okay. Someone asked about the owner's draw and how that would be factored. Owner's draw is basically going to be the net profit, correct?
Right. Yeah. Owner's draw will not be a part of the equation in what you get. It'll strictly be based on profits, and owner's draws do not hit profits.
Can you walk us through how to calculate payroll for a speaking business formed after the after February 15, 2019, after that date?
So I assume you're talking sole proprietor. Yep. In that case, it's still going to be looking at your 2019 tax return. And again, remember that this goes through the bank. Every bank is kind of interpreting these rules in their own way. I would talk to them. So let's say that you're saying, I assume they're asking maybe because they made a little less income in 2019 than maybe they're making now because they started it later in the year later in the year. I would talk to your bank, be like, look, I didn't start at the beginning of the year. I started it late. It was a new business. I'm making more now than I was making then. Can I give you financial statements? Can I do something to show that my profits are actually higher than my tax return shows? It's worth a shot.
Similar question here from Kristen, and just in terms of timing, started my speaking business on January 1st, 2020. So about 3.5 months ago, after quitting my salary job on December 31st, 2019, it would be based on my profit January 1st through March 16th.
Yeah, so actually, this is a good question for a couple of reasons. Number one, there is a cutoff date. You have to have had your business started by February 15th, right? So she does make that cut. But if you started, let's say March 1st, number one, bad timing, man. Don't start a business right now. But number two, as long as you're before that, you qualify. As far as what you'll get to use, I'm guessing that's exactly it. It's going to be financial statements. They may even let you go up through now, but for most people, I'm guessing after March 15th probably won't matter. But yeah, that's where you're gonna have to talk to your bank and say, look, what do you want from me? This is what I have.
What do you want from me? Okay, Heather asked, I thought I read you still have to pay the interest on the loan. Is that incorrect?
Are you talking while it's in that 8-week period?
So while it's in the 8-week period, there's no interest on it, correct? And then
Right.
even in what is, like you mentioned, what is not forgivable, that does become a loan, or stays a loan, I guess is the better way to say it.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't start, you don't start making payments on it, or it doesn't start incurring interest for 6 months.
The interest will still accumulate, I believe, on the deferral.
Okay.
I don't know that for sure, but I believe the interest will still accumulate. If she's asking, there was some talk on, even if you get it forgiven, do you have to pay interest on that 8 weeks that it was still considered a loan? I have not seen definitively either way. I would guess that they will not make you pay that. But even if they do, we're talking 1% interest over a 2-month period. So it'd be incredibly small.
Okay. Jamie asked, as a sole proprietor, could we use that PPP money to hire a new assistant to help develop new online work?
Yeah, I mean, you could use it for that. Whether that'll qualify for forgiveness or not, I don't know for sure. I would hope that it would, because that's kind of the point of it, is to get people working.
Yeah.
But this goes back to, they haven't released what for sole proprietors will qualify. So I would guess yes, but I wouldn't guarantee that.
What happens if you posted a loss because it was a new business? And I think we kind of touched on this. If you post a loss, you basically shouldn't worry about the PPP. Is that correct?
I would talk to your bank first, but I would plan on going with more of the EIDL.
Okay. Jamie asked, can you apply for more than one of these programs, or do you have to pick one route to go? This is important because the PPP and the EIDL do have a little bit of overlap here. So can you explain that?
Yeah, so you can, and this is where they went back and forth a million different times too. What they're saying now is you can apply for and potentially even get both of them, but they cannot be used for the same thing. So you're going to get PPP. That's going to be either for payroll or for whatever they ultimately say a sole proprietor uses it for. If you then go and get the loan for the EIDL, you cannot use it for the same thing. So Grant, let's use it in your case, because you're going to use it for employees. You could not get the EIDL to then pay the employees. You'd have to use it to pay rent or something, equipment for the business, whatever it is. The other thing is that you cannot double dip on the grant portion. So you cannot get your loan forgiven and get the $10,000 grant on the EIDL. If you get that grant, it will reduce your forgivable portion of PPP.
Okay. Did you catch that? That's really important. Okay. Because I've heard a lot of people who said, oh, well, I'm just going to apply for the EIDL, get the $10,000 grant, and then I'm going to apply for the PPP and get whatever that amount is. But you cannot get both. Okay. So if you get the $10,000 grant or whatever dollar amount grant up to $10,000 from the EIDL, they will subtract that out of what they would give you for the PPP grant. Right. So make sure that you understand that. So like in our case, we have not applied for the EIDL for the Speaker Lab stuff. We've just applied on the PPP. But Josh, like you kind of touched on earlier, we will probably apply for the EIDL on our rental property because we don't have any. The PPP isn't as much of a good fit for that.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is if you're looking at potentially getting a decent amount of money from the PPP, I would wait until you can at least talk to a banker and clarify how it's going to work if you apply for both. Because for some people, the PPP is going to be super valuable, and you don't want to take any risks of going for both at once. And I'm saying that the way they read it now, you can qualify for both, but this changes all the time. So if you're someone that can qualify for a good chunk of money with PPP, I would hold off on EIDL until they for sure clarify you can do both.
I would agree. All right. That's the approach that we're taking. Okay. What about credit unions for PPP?
So what they're saying, what the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin says is every FDIC bank is going to ultimately be offering these loans. So, and especially if you have a relationship there, I would think that would be a great route to take.
Odell asked, so you need to bring all that paperwork, P&L, et cetera, with you to the bank. Have you heard of any, because everyone's quarantined right now, no banks want you to come to them. They want to do all this online. I know I've done all of this with we're from Missouri. The credit union we're working with is actually back in Missouri. And it's all been done via email. So, and whereas others like a big, Bank of America or US Bank or whatever, a lot of it's being done online through some type of portal. Is there any type of you need to go into a bank or into a physical location, or is it pretty much going to be done via email or online?
I don't know of any, at least in my area, no banks are open. So it's all online. They're all creating portals. And that's probably, I'm sure, a big part of the holdup as well. Banks are trying to figure out how to do this remotely because a lot of banks didn't do stuff remotely traditionally. So
everything's up in the air right now.
Yep.
Okay. First come, first served. How's that work?
We don't know for sure. What we know is these funds do have a cap on them at some point, in theory. What I can also tell you is that literally right before we jumped on a call, I got an email from one of the CPA sites I'm on, and they just announced that the feds are going to put more money into this. And I think they'll continue being willing to put more money into this. But as of now, there is ultimately a cap on this, which means some people are going to get denied if it gets to that cap. The only thing I could say is, number one, go back to what we said, try to find someone you have some type of relationship with. And number two, get it in as quickly as possible.
On the EIDL, to request for it, do you need an EIN or can you use a DBA?
Yeah, so what they say is, so EIN and DBA are two separate things. EIN is an employer identification number. A DBA is just a doing business as. It's a name, a different name. You don't necessarily need either. At least that's what they say in the application. It says you can go off your social security number because as a sole proprietor, you can operate under your social security number. The one thing I'll tell you is they say that you can, but I noticed in the application, they do not let you put it in the format of a social security number. They put the dash after the two numbers, like in an EIN. So number one, don't go out and get an EIN right now because that'll make it look like your business was formed after that deadline. If you do not have an EIN, you're going to apply and it's still not letting you put it in the format of a social security number, I would just put in your social security number and just leave it in the format with the dash after the second digit. And hopefully they figure it out. Okay.
We kind of touched on this earlier, but just to clarify, what's considered a qualified expense to have the PPP converted from loan to forgiven?
Yeah. So the people with employees that are corporations, that's going to be easier. It's mostly going to be paying your employees at least 75% of what you were paying them before and keeping all the employees that you had on staff before this on staff again. And then if there's more left over after that, it can be used on rent, utilities, and loan payments. If you are a sole proprietor, that's where the mystery is at this point. They have not announced what is going to qualify. I'll go back to my thought is, if you continue to spend the money in the business as you spent it before, it's going to be forgiven because that's what the point of this loan is.
Pete said, just joined. Hey, Pete, be on time next time. So I may have missed this, but the magical question here again, do contractors equal employees?
This is the most debated question in this entire bill. It depends who you ask. It originally clearly stated, yes, they were included. Then after that, it seemed to clearly state, no, they are not included. Now it simply seems to be, what is your bank going to tell you can do? So I'll fall back on that. Ask your bank, tell them you have contractors and employees, and ask them what they want you to do.
Yeah. The way the bill is written makes it seem like contractors should be included, correct? But the way the SBA is kind of released their guidelines makes it seem like they should not be included.
Yeah, basically that's what it came down to.
Good times, good times. Okay, a couple of people have also asked about replay. Yes, this will be available as replay. We'll also be taking the audio from this and putting it on the podcast feed as well if you'd like to listen to that. Okay, I'm continuing to scroll through here. Harvey asked, I've heard it was a 30-year loan at 1%.
No. Well, it depends which one he's talking here. If we're talking PPP, it is a 2-year loan at 1%. If we are talking EIDL, it is up to 30 years. I think the terms will kind of depend on you, your business, things like that. And it is at a 4% interest.
Okay. I'm scrolling through questions here. Steve asked, I must have missed this, but is the EIDL or PPP, or are they two different programs that can both be applied for?
Yeah, two separate loan programs. EIDL, $10,000 grant, potentially, meaning you never have to pay it back. The rest is a loan. The PPP is the 2.5 times payroll or profit, and potentially 100% forgiven no matter how much you get.
Jamie asked, how about unemployment and PPP together?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. You can apply for both, but the thing with PPP is it's to keep salaries going, whether that's your own salary or employee salary. And if you keep your salary going, then you wouldn't be eligible for unemployment. So my thought would be, until you are approved for PPP and start paying yourself again, go get unemployment. And then after that, you can report that you're getting your salary again.
Tim asked if I file as an S corp, but I am the only owner employee. Am I still eligible for the PPP EIDL benefits of a sole proprietor?
Yeah, and this is a tough one. What you're going to qualify as an S corp, meaning the corporation rules are going to apply to you, meaning it's going to be based solely on payroll, but your own salary counts. And when it comes to salary, each individual employee, you can only use up to $100,000, similar to the limit on profit. So if you paid yourself $150,000, you can only use $100,000 of that. But whatever your salary was as an S corp, and this is why you want to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to in an S corp and paying yourself a reasonable salary. Now that's what they're going to use. You're going to get 2.5 times that average monthly salary for yourself. This
is also why you need a good financial person with you. Okay. So Josh and Andrew have been that for me for the past several years. Cause I don't know if you can actually enjoy some of this stuff. Like, I don't know about the rest of the people you work with, but I've tried to keep up to speed on a lot of this stuff and try to be knowledgeable on this stuff. You cannot, as an entrepreneur, you cannot as a business owner, just stick your head in the sand and just hope someone else takes care of this. Because it's actually not Josh's responsibility to apply for any of this stuff, right? As the business owner, I got to do my homework. I got to do my due diligence. I got to figure out. Now I'm peppering him with questions, but I'm ultimately the one that is filling out the applications, that is signing things. So I need to make sure I'm up to speed on what's going on. You got to do the same thing for your business. Do not be sticking your head in the sand on this type of stuff. All right. Todd asked, for proof for the EIDL loan, can you take the advance and not the loan portion?
Great question. And yes, you can take let's assume you get the 10K and then they come back and say, hey, you're approved for a $25,000 loan on top of it. You can say, no, thank you. I'll take my 10K and run. And if you can afford to do that, you don't need the loan, I'd absolutely do it.
Ray said, it sounds like if you're a sole proprietor, no employees, and you have a little overhead, a little equipment, home office, etc., the better route would be the EIDL. Is that accurate?
I would say that depends on what your profit is. If your profit is at least $100,000 in 2019, you're looking at potentially over $20,000 in the PPP that can all be forgiven. Whereas you may, as they're saying it now, only get $1,000 with the grant, and at most $10,000. So if you could use that extra money, I'd still go for PPP.
Harvey asked, our financial planner said, get as much filled out on your own as possible. It may get you moved to the top of their process list at your bank. I have my 2 cents would be yes. Like, the easier you can make it for the banker right now, the better, right? So when I got a big list of documents that the banker sent to me. Is like, we're going to need all this stuff. And I made sure to double or triple, quadruple check. Everything was signed. Everything was filled out. It was completed. The documents that they needed were accurate. That hey, we need your articles of organization. We need your tax returns from the past couple of years. We need your payroll from the past couple of months. Like, I wanted to make sure I had all of that, because the easier you make the banker's job. Remember, the bankers at the moment, for the PPP at least, the banker's the one that holds the power, because they look it over, they approve it, and then they pass it on to SBA to get the funding for you. So you want to make it as simple and as easy for the banker as possible. Is that fair?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'd compare it to kind of how I am during tax season. It's chaos. I'm working 15 hours a day sometimes. If someone comes to me with a shoebox full of receipts and someone comes to me with very clean financial statements, guess which one I'm going to do first? Yeah. So, and the bankers are overwhelmed right now, most of them. So the people that can give them a clean file that they don't have to do much to, they can look it over and say, good to go, submit it. I would guess you're going to go to the front of the pile.
Yeah. Another question here. Is it possible to get funded to hire people now?
That's an interesting one. You won't be able to use future employees to get the money. So if that's the question, if you can say, hey, I'm going to pay people this much, can I get 2.5 times that? They will not allow you to do that. I don't think there would be any problem to get the money and use it to pay new employees. That would still be eligible for forgiveness.
Okay. All right, we're going to, we'll wrap up here in just a couple more minutes. But again, if anyone has any other questions, I think I've hit everything I've seen in the comments, but go ahead and drop that. Any other questions that you do have. I know, again, a couple people have asked about the replay, but yes, it's a Facebook Live. You can go back and watch this as much as you want, wherever you're watching this right now. As soon as we're done, this will be available. Let's do this. Let's do a quick recap here of the 4 different options. So we have the stimulus check, the unemployment, the EIDL, and the PPP. So can you give us the 30-second synopsis of each of those and how we prioritize them?
Yep. Stimulus check coming directly from the IRS. Nothing you have to do for it. Supposedly they're going to start putting that into your bank account next week. The only thing to note there, if your bank account has changed, or if you have not given them your bank account in the past, maybe you owed money and paid by check, they're going to put a portal up that you can go in there and say, hey, here's my accurate bank info, so that you can get it direct deposited instead of having a check mailed, which is supposedly going to take a long time. Other than that, you're good to go. That if you qualify, you're going to get that money. The unemployment, for the first time ever, self-employed people that have lost income due to COVID are eligible for unemployment. Very tricky, very difficult. States are overwhelmed. You have to take control of the situation. You have to be relentless. Contact your state, figure out what's going on. You should qualify for that. The EIDL, this is a loan for small business owners that are impacted by COVID-19. It's a very favorable loan, up to 30 years, 4% interest. Best of all, potentially up to $10,000 in grant that you never have to pay back, not taxable income. So just a free potential $10,000. You can apply for that online, SBA's website, a 10 to 15-minute application. Finally, we have the big one, the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. It's easiest for people that are S corps or corporations and have employees. They're going to get two and a half times their average monthly payroll, but it could potentially be big for sole proprietors as well. Meaning you just filled out that Schedule C on your personal tax return. You're going to need your 2019 tax return showing those profits. If you have not filed yet, you are going to need some form of financial statements. My takeaway on the PPP is talk to a banker, figure out what you qualify for, if you qualify, and what they need from you.
Cool. All right. A couple other questions that had come in here. Todd had asked, are there any resources, articles, sites available online that addresses Congress' latest statement on the EIDL amount?
None that I know of. I'm in CPA groups that people kind of drop and say, hey, this is, we saw that this letter is going out from Congress. I have not seen anything official, and I have not heard any announcement if anything's changed since they sent that out. But if the SBA, when the SBA makes changes, then we get official documents on that, and I can drop it over to you and you can share it with them.
A question here, wondering why the application needs to be sent to the SBA when it was intended to be funded immediately by banks, eliminating red tape.
Depends which program you're talking about. EIDL is directly from the SBA. PPP is directly from the banks, and the bank does make the ultimate. And that's what the holdup is right now, I think, is the banks are saying, like, you want us to fund these loans without you guys approving them. Well, what happens if we did something wrong and they shouldn't have gotten approved? Are you going to hold us responsible? So the rumor is that's a big holdup here, is the banks are kind of feel like they're being held liable for something they don't want to be liable for. But that is the goal of it, is you can give this information to the bank approves it, and the same day you get your funds. That was how it was originally written to be.
And then Diane asked, do you have to pay back the stimulus?
No, good question. A lot of rumors out there, a lot of incorrect information out there. This is a prepayment of a future refundable credit. All right. That means on your 2020 tax return, it is going to show the stimulus credit. And if you already got it, then it's just going to be there and it's going to be like nothing happened. Contrary to what some people are saying, this will not reduce your normal refund in any way, shape, or form. It will not be taxable income. Nothing about it is something you will have to pay back. But one more note on that, if you don't meet those income requirements that we talked about, the $150,000 or $75,000 if you're single, and you've been impacted in 2020, and you're going to be under those thresholds in 2020, when you file your 2020 tax return next year, you will get that credit if you're under those thresholds, which I know, great if you need the money now, but someday.
All right. Tara said, super helpful. Thank you. Can you restate what makes the EIDL forgivable? Is it payroll, rent, utilities?
Yeah. So it looks like she maybe just got the two programs mixed up. The EIDL does not have the forgiveness portion. It just has the automatic 10K grant. There's no stipulation on what needs to be used on that. That's just an automatic grant. The PPP program has a forgivable portion. If you are if you're an S corp, most people that are qualified for this will be S corps. It's going to be strictly based on, did you keep your employees? Did you pay them at least 75% of what you paid them before? And did you use any remaining money on rent, utilities, and loan payments?
Cynthia asked, does the bank look at your credit score or do any type of credit check?
PPP, it says no. The owner will not in any way will not be a guarantor on this. They will not be held responsible for it, and they will not have any type of credit checks. The EIDL, we don't know. The way it looks like it's written is if you're getting less than 200,000, they won't look at that. But I wouldn't guarantee that.
Are you taxed on unemployment?
Yes. Good question. It's basically unemployment is there to replace your income, which was taxable. So think of it like you're getting a paycheck from the government. I would also make sure that they withhold taxes on that. Otherwise, you're going to get a fun tax bill when you do your taxes next year.
Gotcha. Cool. Whew. Okay. All right. Everyone take a deep breath here. We've covered a lot of information. I know your head may be swimming right now, but again, like I kind of touched on my little rant earlier, I would emphasize how important it is for you as a speaker, you as an entrepreneur, to really make sure you are up to date and up to speed with this, right? So just like I was saying, I've been spending a ridiculous amount of time trying to understand this, trying to learn this, trying to educate myself so that I am up to speed on what I need to do for the Speaker Lab, for my own speaking business, but also for that we make sure that we help you guys as well. So you got to make sure that you dig into this stuff, that you really understand the different options there of what people of what you are eligible for and what you need to be applying for and what you need to be paying attention to. Now, in the event, one other kind of question here, in the event that, let's say, again, there's this $2.2 trillion stimulus, and a percentage of that has been allocated to what we've covered and talked about here today. If that, if this, we go through this money in 2.5 months, and we're still in an economic crisis, any magic crystal ball here of how this is going to play out?
No, I mean, look, the bottom line is no one in our government wants to crash the economy. So their goal is going to be to do whatever it takes to not crash the economy. And if that means putting out another $5 trillion, whatever it is, they're going to do that. For the next however many months this lasts, the national debt is not going to matter. It's going to be, how do we make sure that we don't go into or stay in a depression? So the best thing I can tell you is they're gonna do what it takes to make sure that people are still able to pay their bills. Yeah.
One other thing I would add to this is there is no shame in applying for any of these things. So getting a stimulus check, applying for unemployment, getting the EIDL, applying for the PPP. Don't be like, we're good. We don't need that. I'm too good for that. No. Don't have that approach right now. Okay. Like Josh said, the government here is trying to inject cash into the economy here to keep things from getting bad. So these are good. These are weird, unprecedented opportunities. So make sure that you take advantage of this. And like we talked about, I can show you here. Here's the stack of papers I've been working on for the EIDLs, or the PPP stuff rather. So make sure that you pay attention to this. So Josh, I don't want to for people to hammer you, and so you don't have to pass out your email, but you offer a phenomenal service. Where can we learn more about your company and what you guys do?
Yeah, so they can go to theprestigejournal.com. I mean, I'm happy to, if you have quick questions, you want to email it over, Josh at tpjllc.com.
I tried.
Hey, it's all right. If they want to post some comments, some questions, continued questions in the comments of this Facebook live video, I'll check them periodically. I guess, and one more thought I'll leave you with, that that's an analogy only people that have young kids right now can make, because I've watched Frozen 2 about 6,000 times since quarantine started. But you seen it yet? You have kids, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
we saw it twice in the theater, and then as soon as Disney Plus dropped it, Yep, exactly. So the end of it, Anna's going through that cave, and she thinks Olaf's died, and she thinks her sister's died, and she doesn't know what to do, and she sings that song, The Next Right Thing. Next Right Thing.
And
yep.
That's what I'm thinking right now. If you're overwhelmed with this, if you're getting killed with this, and you're saying, God, unemployment, stimulus, EIDL, PPP, I have no idea what to do. I don't know where to start. What's the next right thing you can do in that moment? Is it call unemployment? Is it making a list of 5 bankers that you can call and see what you qualify for? Is it getting on the SBA website and quickly applying for EIDL? What's the next right thing you can do? Start there and then just keep going on. What's the next right thing? What's the next right thing?
We're all doing our best here. I was trying to see if there's a way I could drop a couple people were asking, can you give us one more time what your website is and email?
Yeah, Josh at tpjllc.com. And the website would be theprestigejournal.com.
Okay. And let's go back to something. I'm going to protect Josh here. Let's go back to something we said earlier. Do you remember when we were talking about if you're applying for the PPP, or let's say you're just doing your taxes, and it's one thing to say, Josh, here's all my receipts, make it go away, versus like, here's some clean financial statements. Which thing is he going to be more likely to work on, right? Probably the thing that has their act together. So if you email Josh and say, hey, I missed part of the Facebook Live with Grant, what am I supposed to do? don't like if you ask a lame question, you're going to get a lame answer. Okay. So have a specific question, go through. We've covered a lot of information in the past hour. Make sure you listen to this, make sure you've done your due diligence and say, okay, I just wanted to clarify one thing. I couldn't like do your homework first before you ask the question. Okay. Yep. So again, I'm just doing that to protect Josh and make sure you do some homework there. All right.
And understand that a lot of the answers are going to be, you got to call your banker. And that's what it comes down to. I would start there, call your banker. And then if they give you things like, oh, I didn't really understand that, shoot me an email. I can clarify the best I can.
Yeah. Like we were touching on, this is a game that was created a couple of weeks ago, and the rules have been changing and the pieces are being moved around. And so who knows, we're recording this on a Thursday afternoon. By Monday, this could all be obsolete and totally different. But as of now, this is where things stand. So Josh, thanks for the time, man. We really, really appreciate it. This is really, really important stuff for speakers. As soon as we started hearing about this and learning about this, I knew we wanted to do this and wanted to share this with speakers. So we appreciate you being our resident expert on this.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Keep fighting, everybody. We'll get through it.
All right, guys.